Good afternoon. It is a real privilege for me to be here tonight. See, I spend a lot of time talking to policymakers and responding to a lot of the negative or a lot of the rosy pictures that lobbyists and foundations like the Sullivan Foundation try to paint about Equatorial Guinea, or trying to respond to Julio Iglesias trying to go to Equatorial Guinea, or just as yesterday I got an article about La Roja. This is the Spanish soccer team that is going to Equatorial Guinea to play. For those of you that don't know, the Spanish soccer team won the last World Cup. So them going to Spain is a big deal. I spent a lot of time doing that type of tedious work, right? So for me to be here in front of an audience of interesting, engaged young people wanting to do something about freedom, wanting to change the world, is really energizing for me. So thank you for this opportunity. One thing that should emerge tonight as you listen to Marina, Abir, Hannah, Ahmed, and myself tonight, is that courage, creativity, commitment are powerful tools to fight, to combat repression, and to change the world. My own story of courage, commitment, and creativity started when I was about your age. I was a young man of 19, from a conversation I had with my father. In 1993, the military came to my village, arrested, tortured, publicly executed 2 young men. They burned down my family house. That night, I had a conversation with my father about what had just happened in our community, about the young men that had died, about our house. I asked my father what we could do about what had just happened. To this day, I remember the sadness in my father's face. To this day, I remember how he could barely say a word, the defeat in his face. His answer to me was, there is nothing we can do. Fast forward to February 2011. Juan Tomás Ávila Laurel, one of the most prolific writers from Equatorial Guinea, decides to start a hunger strike. It is the first documented act of civil resistance by an Equatorial Guinean since independence in 1968. The next day, this picture of Juan Tomás appeared on Facebook. A support page was created to ensure that if Juan Tomás should be announced to have committed suicide or died of high fevers while he was in police custody, the international community would know that his high fever or his alleged suicide had everything to do with his courageous decision to single-handedly challenge the Equatorial Guinean regime. In a letter that he wrote announcing the motive of his brave act, he says, "We cannot continue to live under a dictatorship that crushes our dreams." One of the people that created that support page for Juan Tomás was comic artist Ramon Esono, a friend of mine. 2 days after he created the page, he uploaded this image with these words right here. Living in injustice is like feeling pain and not being able to scream. It's a nightmare that you would not want to wish upon anyone. Now, the injustices that Juan Tomás and Ramon are talking about include torture, arbitrary detentions, incarcerations, include extrajudicial killings, include denials of basic freedoms, freedom of expression, political freedoms. It also includes sponsored inequalities and poverty by the government of Equatorial Guinea. And those injustices were the impetus for me to come to the United States and try to acquire the tools that will help me bend the arc of history towards justice in my country. So I became a lawyer, and in 2008, I founded or I established EG Justice, a human rights organization dedicated to promoting human rights, rule of law in Equatorial Guinea. Now, where is Equatorial Guinea? And as Thor mentioned, it's not New Guinea, and it's not New Guyana, and it's not Guinea-Bissau. I wanted to imagine a country, a small, tiny country flush with oil money, where, as Thor mentioned, the GDP per capita, the income per person, is on par with that of Italy, right? Now, I want you to picture a place quite the opposite, right? Where two-thirds of the population, live in extreme poverty, without access to water, education, healthcare. Where infant and child mortality rates are on par with those of war-ravaged DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Impossible as it sounds, those two pictures describe Equatorial Guinea, a West African country that has the highest GDP per capita on the continent, right? It's home to about 500,000 people. The president of Equatorial Guinea just celebrated 34 years in power. He is the longest-serving head of state. Very few people in the US have heard of Equatorial Guinea, but these oil companies know all about it because they control the oil business in Equatorial Guinea. Most of the exports from oil in Equatorial Guinea come to the United States. About $1 billion between 2000 and 2010, $1 billion disappeared from state coffers in Equatorial Guinea annually, every single year. Today, I would rather talk about Juan Tomas, Ramon Esono, and a group of young people, increasing group of young people in my country, to make the case about the importance of freedom of expression. I want to do an experiment. I want you to cover your mouth with one hand. And I'm going to count to 3. When I get to 3, I want you to say as loud as you can, Equatorial Guinea, all right? Without taking your hands off your mouth, all right? 1, 2, 3. You sound like cows. And that is precisely what lack of freedom of expression does to a society. There is no freedom of expression in my country. We have been reduced basically to chaos, right? It is extremely dangerous for people in my country to speak their mind about anything the government deems political, anything the government deems threatening, right? Everywhere you go in Equatorial Guinea, there are pictures of President Obiang. Everywhere. State radio, state TV broadcast 24 hours good news about Equatorial Guinea, propaganda, government propaganda. One radio reporter in Equatorial Guinea once said that President Obiang can kill without having to account, without having to respond to anyone, because it is God himself with whom the president is in permanent contact and grants him that power. So in that context, the work that EG Justice is doing with Ramon, producing a comic that satirizes the president, the work that bloggers in Equatorial Guinea and outside in the diaspora are doing to inform and mobilize people, the work that Juan Tomas is doing is an extremely powerful tool to empower people for change in Equatorial Guinea. One of my friends and mentors, Wenceslao Mansogo, a human rights activist in my country, once told me that in Equatorial Guinea, we have to make the road by walking. You are here today because you are very smart. You are very creative. You are very courageous. The Human Rights Foundation, my colleagues and myself are here to give you an opportunity to commit your creativity, your intelligence, your strength to help bring about freedom, to create free and open societies around the world. I'm here to invite you to work with us, to help us build freedom around the world and in places like Equatorial Guinea. Thank you very much.